It is a good time to be a horror fan. With games like Resident Evil 4 Remake, Silent Hill 2 Remake, and of course, the Deadspace Remake which we now have. Man, if you grew up with these games, I'm sure you already know the hype that comes with these announcements. Personally, me, the Resident Evil 4 Remake, that's the main one I'm excited for. When they announced the Deadspace Remake, I was excited, but honestly more excited because I was like, okay, if this does well, then maybe we can get a Dead Space 4. But admittedly, I wasn't that excited for the remake itself. Of course, I was gonna get it. That's a no-brainer if you've played the original Dead Space, but nonetheless, the game is out now, and I gotta say, it's really good. Am I surprised that it's good? No. The original Dead Space was really good, so I was like, okay, as long as they kind of stick with what made the original special while also adding some new elements that make the game more modern, more fresh, so to say, then I had no fear whatsoever that the game was going to turn out good, and it did. This is a first impression, so I'm only going off what I've played thus far, which is maybe like, I say like close to half of the game done. And yeah, the game is great. Going down to the gameplay first, right? So from what I've played thus far, the game is really true to what makes Dead Space special. Honestly, like, it's been a while since I played the original Dead Space, and the obvious changes I did notice, but there's some stuff where I was like, this just feels the same, which isn't a bad thing. That's how true to the original that this game is. Like, if you haven't played the original Dead Space in a long time, you're probably not even gonna notice a lot of the changes, honestly. Besides how Isaac looks, which, you know, we'll talk about that later. But yeah, beyond some, I say some changes with the exploration and some story changes, it was really hard for me to notice everything. It just felt like I was playing the same game, but with, you know, better graphics and stuff, right? Which is a good thing though, because it didn't feel like I wasn't playing Dead Space, which is good. That's always going to be good because, like I said, the OG Dead Space was great. But the changes that I did notice were, for starters, the game looks fantastic. Obviously, the game is a remake, and they did rebuild everything from the ground up, and it's really noticeable. Especially if you played the OGs, you're like, okay, this looks great. It's just, if you remember how the old one looks, and then you come to this, you're gonna be like, oh, okay, like, this isn't a half-assed remake or just a HD port. It looks drastically different, while also looking the same, if that makes sense. It retains the essence of what made Dead Space special, but it obviously looks way better. The gameplay feels just as smooth and tight as the original did. Honestly, I feel like Isaac feels even more stronger on this game, or more powerful, I should say. Like, whenever I would do the stomp on this game, like, I was like, damn, like, you really feel like you stomping the mess out of these boxes. Like, there's a lot of times I just wanted to stomp on something, you know, just to let out that you know, that aggression. And this game does a good job at making you feel like Isaac's pissed. Like, when I stomp on this game, or when I hit someone on this game, I really feel like Isaac's hitting with all of his might, which is a good thing, because this game was always known for being intense, you know, and gory and all of that, and the remake doesn't disappoint when it comes to that. Another thing is the guns. The guns feel more powerful than before, and they even added more ways of utilizing them, like with the alternate fires and stuff, more akin to, I'd say, like the other Dead Spaces from what I can remember. This game has a lot of elements that they borrowed from, like, Dead Space 2 and 3, which I was not mad at. You know, in the remake, you want to improve some things. There's some things that, while at the time I didn't think needed to be improved with Dead Space, looking at it now, I'm like, okay, that was a nice addition. I'm glad they changed that, right? And just taken from the other games, that's always going to help to make the game feel more modern and not as dated. So I'm glad that they made some of those changes. Other changes that I noticed was mainly due to the enemies. All the enemies feel the same, but I noticed, at least on like hard difficulty, I feel like the enemies aren't as aggressive. Like I could just be remembering things wrong, but the enemies didn't feel as aggressive on this one to me. Like hard mode on the original, even in the beginning when you're running, they beating your ass. You're trying to run and like get to the elevator and you're getting hit. But on the remake, they feel a little bit more friendly. Like in the beginning when you're running to the elevator, they don't really chase you like how they did on the original. That's like the first thing I noticed was like, hold on, they don't seem like they it don't seem like they care about me as much as they did in the original. In the original, they really wanted to hurt me, the Necromorphs, but the remake, they kind of like, we'll give you a chance to run. We'll give you a chance. So yeah, the AI seems a little bit more tweaked on this one, but I don't think that's necessarily like a bad thing. I haven't played through the full game, so I don't know like how later bosses are gonna feel per se, but the AI seems a little bit more friendly. Even with the ammo, I felt like I was running out of ammo way more on the original, especially on hard mode compared to this one. This one I was just stacked for days with ammo, so I didn't really run into too much problems as far as that so far. But yeah, to each their own. Some people might find that to be to the game's detriment, like, oh, this feels a little bit easier than the old one, but it doesn't feel like drastically easy. Like, I'm not saying like I feel like I'm playing on easy mode or nothing like that. I just noticed in some instances the enemies don't appear as aggressive as what I remember, but the game is still great. Don't get me wrong. The enemies feel balanced. They don't feel cheap, so to say. They don't feel too easy. The enemies can still take you out if you're careless or if you're just doing the wrong things. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. It was just something I noticed. This game also does a great job when it comes to exploration. The game is much more seamless than the original. When you're exploring the Ishimura, it feels like you're really just exploring this really big ship and everything's all connected. And the main way they do that, or the main way they allow you to, I guess, get around more easier without having to worry about loading screens and all of that, so to say, is the tram system, which I believe is a new feature. I don't remember that doing all that. I could be wrong, but I don't remember doing that in the original, just traveling using the tram system, so that helps. And another thing too is when it comes to finding weapons, well, this time you actually find weapons. In the original, you had to buy the weapons, which I don't know. It depends on you whether or not you prefer that. Me personally, I didn't care for either. I'm like, okay, this one I'm finding the weapons, the other one I was buying the weapons. So that's really going to depend on you whether or not you like that. But it is something that they changed, so I figured I'd mention it. Another thing that I noticed was the inclusion of side missions, which surprised me to say the least. I was not expecting that, but I think that they do add to the game in a great way. There's these side missions with Nicole specifically that, do a good job of adding more to the character. You get to see what she was doing when she was on the ship and stuff, and I was like, okay, this is a pretty good. This is a nice inclusion. I'm glad that they added this. And I just like how connected everything feels in this game. Even from the beginning, they offer you like a good amount of room when it comes to exploration. There's a bunch of ways you can go about exploring an area. You'll see a bunch of doors that are open that, you might go into the bathroom or go into the showers or whatever. And as you enter, you'll be able to find different forms of loot. You'll find ammo, stasis refill packs and stuff like that. But the catch is, even though you can go everywhere, it doesn't mean you always should, because if you want to go for that loot, you're more than likely gonna have to fight for it, which I thought was pretty badass. But yeah, they don't let you come out easy on this game. If you want to go explore an area, you want to go find some more loot, some more ammo, etc. Hey, just be ready for a fight, because they're gonna probably make you use the ammo you just found. You know, I would go into like a bathroom or, you know, a little office, and I'd find some health, and I'm like, oh yeah, you know, I finally got me some health. And then a necromorph would come out the ceiling, and I'd have to use the health that I just got, and I'm like, damn. But nonetheless, I thought they did a great job at, you know, keeping the exploration and keeping the Ishimura itself true to the original, while also adding some more depth to how you go about exploring it. So I really enjoyed the gameplay and exploration, along with just the details that was added to this game. EA did a great job at making everything feel alive, and it was just well thought out. There's one part that comes to mind in particular where I entered this room and a necromorph had busted in while I was, you know, doing some looting and whatnot. And before, you know, I even had to turn Isaac to look at the necromorph, he already did it. His head already looked like, he was like, oh, like he already noticed that the necromorph had busted into the room. And it's that amount of detail, it's things like that that make this game really, really stand out. Like, they didn't have to do that. They could have just had me still facing I could have just still been facing the locker or whatever, you know, when I was exploring. But the fact that they were like, okay, Isaac's gonna look in this direction that the necromorph comes in, and, you know, it's small, I know, but it makes such a difference, and it shows that they really did care about this project. So hey, hats off to EA for that. Just actually caring and actually putting a whole lot of effort into things that really didn't need it, but nonetheless, it's appreciated. Now, we can't talk Dead Space without mentioning the horror aspect of the game, right? The atmosphere. Just like dang near everything else in this remake, EA knocked it out of the park. They got the atmosphere down, they got the spookiness down. Now, I'll be honest with y'all, Dead Space never really scared me. There's only a few games I've played that I thought were genuinely scary to me. Dead Space was never one of them. You know, at least when I finally played it. I remember when I was younger and I seen the trailers and everything, I was like, oh, that game looks scary. I thought this game was going to be like the scariest game ever when I first saw the commercial. Man. Oh, man. Just thinking about that brings me back. That was like 15 years ago when the first Dead Space came out. And I remember I'd be watching, like, I don't know, I think I was watching SmackDown or something and they showed the commercial. Dang. But anyway, yeah, the game's not scary to me. The original didn't scare me. The remake doesn't scare me. But that don't mean it's not gonna scare you. You know, we completely different people. I don't know. You know, I don't know how the soldiers are gonna take the game, but it doesn't scare me. I'm not gonna lie. That doesn't mean that it's not spooky though. That doesn't mean that it doesn't succeed in what it's trying to do. The atmosphere was amazing. I felt like I was on a ship that was deserted and just left with aliens, you know, like they knocked that out of the park. And it does feel spooky, and there were some times where I still had PTSD when I was on the elevator, just because of the OG games. I would often find myself looking up, you know, the ceilings, just waiting for something to jump out at me. So they got it down. I don't want what I'm saying to deter you, so I'll just say try the game out for yourself, and that will determine how scary it is to you. Me personally, I think the reason why the games never really scared me is because I always felt badass. I always felt like it wasn't the necromorphs after me. I felt like I was after the necromorphs on these games. But I will say that EA did a good job at making Isaac feel more vulnerable in this game, because in case you didn't know, he talks on the remake, which he didn't in the original. He didn't say a damn thing on the original. This one, they definitely fleshed him out a bit more. He comes off more vulnerable and like an engineer that just happens to have a bad day on the job. He doesn't come off like a complete badass. Even though I still do feel badass, Isaac himself, he sounds like he's afraid of what's going on. He sounds confused. He's conflicted. And I think that adds to the game, in my opinion. I actually prefer him talking over the original. Because some instances in the original, I was like, why aren't you saying nothing? You would expect him to say something in a lot of moments in that game. Like, yeah, but on the remake, he talks. The times where you're like, okay, he should probably say something, he does. And his talking doesn't overstay its welcome, though. It doesn't, like, I wouldn't say he's Nathan Drake. I wouldn't say he's a character that's just talking the whole damn game. He doesn't. He usually only talks when he's spoken to, which is good. It kind of retains a similar feel to the original, while also fleshing him out a bit more. So I really liked the approach they did with the remake. I really enjoyed it. Now, while on the topic of Isaac having a voice, I also got to talk about his new look. This time around, the developers opted to go with using the actual voice actor's face for the in-game model of Isaac. And I'm not gonna lie, I was really disappointed when I first saw this. Like, obviously it didn't keep me from buying the game. It doesn't ruin the game. I still am enjoying the game so far, but Isaac just looks so different. And I get it. Don't get me wrong, I get it. Understand that they're trying to make more, well, they're trying to add more to his character by using the in-game model, or using the actor's model in-game. They're trying to make it more, I guess, immersive, you know, make him seem more realistic. I felt like they could have used the original model and still did this, but to each their own. I'm not gonna act like I hate the game or anything, or I hate his face, because, you know, Gunnar Wright, he's cool. He's a real cool dude. And my main thing, I feel like if they would have added at least some stubble to his face or something, it would have made more sense. I think Isaac probably in his 40s or something. I don't know, but I wish they would have made him a little bit older looking. But like I said, it didn't take away from the game. It's still cool. But I gotta mention it. I gotta mention it because that was the first thing that caught my attention initially when I first saw the gameplay, and I was like, oh heck nah. I'm not gonna lie, I was like, what have they done? But regardless, it didn't take away from the game. I have kind of gotten used to his face to some degree. I'm not gonna act like I like it, because it's just hard for me because I played the OGs and I'm so used to Isaac's old face. So obviously I do prefer those faces. I am biased, but I did get accustomed to his new look, or his real look, I guess you should say. And yeah, it's not a biggie, but it's not a biggie, but yeah. Moving on though, the story overall. Some of the main changes I've noticed, but actually, I can't even say too much because I'm not trying to spoil anything. Because there are some changes story-wise. Even from what I've played so far, I've noticed some differences. There are some more fleshed out things. Like I mentioned before with Nicole, and they go more in depth regarding the unitology and all that. There's a new character. There might be a couple new characters, but there's one new character that I noticed from the jump, and I was like, oh, okay, they added a new character, which doesn't take away from the story or really add to the story, I don't think. I mean, I guess you can say it makes the crew feel more like a crew. Like, it's not just like 4 people. You know, they got some more members on there, I guess. But yeah, they have a new character. And I really believe, whether or not you like this story, over the original is just really gonna depend to what kind of storytelling you enjoy. Like, obviously in the original, Isaac doesn't talk. This one he does. The characters are a little bit more fleshed out in general on this game. So it's really going to depend on the player whether or not they prefer one over the other. I prefer the remake overall, if I'm being honest. I do prefer the way they went about things, even though it easily could have went wrong. They managed to get it right for the most part. From what I've played so far, I don't know if they're gonna mess up the whole ending. I don't know what they're gonna do. That's I don't know how they're gonna handle everything after the parts that I've played, but so far, I think they got it spot on. They hit it right on the nail. Isaac, even though he talks, he's not an annoying character. He doesn't overstay his welcome, so to say. I still think he's cool. His face aside, it's whatever. I'm guessing if they remake the second one, that he'll probably look more in line with the older games. He'll probably have like a little stubble action going. Might have some gray hair. That's what I'm hoping for. If they do remake it, I'm hoping that they'll combine both looks. Or shoot, just give us some like DLC costume of the old Isaac. I'd rock with that. I'd be perfectly fine with that. Update the old Isaac's character model so we can get best of both worlds. I'd pay a couple dollars for that. I don't know about y'all, but I would. I really would too. No lie. So yeah. In conclusion, the game is great. I'm still playing it, like I said. Still got, I think I'm maybe like 4 or 5 hours away from beating it. I'd imagine, unless this game is longer than the original. I don't know offhand, but we'll see. From the action, the story, just the whole atmosphere, they got it down. It feels like I'm playing Dead Space. This isn't a game that does not feel like Dead Space, right? A lot of people complain about Callisto Protocol. Like, oh, this feels like Dead Space at home, or this is bootleg Dead Space or whatever. Well, this is legit Dead Space, okay? You're not gonna feel like you're playing anything else, which is good, because in a remake they obviously could have messed it up. They could have, but they didn't. I actually enjoyed Callisto Protocol though, man. I did enjoy that game. I talk about it in one of my previous videos, but despite its flaws, man, that game was cool. Especially now, they updated a lot of stuff in that game, and it's gotten pretty good, in my opinion. But yeah, EA did an excellent job on this remake. I'm actually pretty surprised how good it came out. EA can be a little fishy sometimes. I'm not gonna lie. They be on some other stuff sometimes, but hey, they did not disappoint. I'm not gonna lie. I'm really satisfied. Not that I'm that hard to satisfy with games. Like when I see Dead Space, I'm like, okay, it gotta be good, right? Even the infamous Dead Space 3, I liked it. I enjoyed Dead Space 3. Most people hated Dead Space 3, so I just like Dead Space. When it comes to survival horror, it has to be like really bad for me not to like it, or like even the ones that are like flawed or like got some like really obvious errors. I usually can still enjoy it if I'm a fan of the IP. Like Resident Evil, I liked Resident Evil 6. People hated that. I like Resident Evil 5. Like the ones that people didn't enjoy, I tend to still like, as long as it's not too off the walls, Resident Evil 6 was different, that one was crazy, but hey, as long as it got Leon in it, I ain't gonna lie, I'm probably gonna like it anyway. So with all that being said, go out and buy the game, show support, cause hey, if this game does good, we might get Dead Space 4, which I really hope we do. and probably a Dead Space 2 remake, which after playing this, I'm like, they gotta do it. Honestly, I'm already trying to picture how good a Dead Space 2 remake would be. Dead Space 2 was my favorite one, so if they remake that one, oh man, I'd be hecka happy. I'm not gonna lie. So yeah, check out the game. Is it worth $70? Depends on you. Yeah, it really does. See, I didn't mind too much because hey, it's Dead Space. I was like, hey, I'm a support because I want Dead Space 4. But if you played the original a lot, I don't know. Maybe wait for a sale or rent it. But you obviously gotta play it. That's a no-brainer. You gotta play this game. It's worth it. Even if you played the OG a bunch of... I played the OG Dead Space so many times, and I can say, yeah, it's worth playing. The remake is worth playing. Check it out. But, alright, soldiers. I hope all of you have a good day or night, depending on when you watch this. I appreciate any support. Likes, subscribes, comments, all that. If you want to talk Dead Space, horror games, or any games that you're excited for, leave it in the comments. And yeah, this is Solid J. Take it easy.